Thinkst Canary makes high-fidelity honeypots that set up in minutes and requires no ongoing administration. Attackers moving silently on your network advertise their presence by tripping over them. There's a good reason Thinkst Canaries are deployed and loved by some of the best security teams in the world. They're inexpensive, they're simple, and they work. For more information, go to securityweekly.com/canary or direct message @thinkstcanary on Twitter. In 2018, ransomware advanced significantly and is now capable of taking out infrastructure and operations across the globe. As a result, many organizations are bogged down in reactive work and often overlook the value of crucial information. In Domain Tools Threat Intelligence Report, learn how to uncover some of the most critical insights from your organization's alerts and indicators that will allow you to shift to a more proactive posture. To download this white paper, please visit securityweekly.com/domain tools. Is your IT team ready to face the next implementation or upgrade? Do you have a pool of talented team members who are trained and ready to support your organization's growth? The right IT skills development platform can get you past the IT skills gap. With training content that's so engaging, some even call it binge-worthy learning, your team will watch and learn more with IT Pro TV. Get a free team trial of IT Pro TV today. Visit securityweekly.com/IT Pro TV. Welcome back, everyone, to Paul's Security Weekly. This is the security news for this week. Quick announcement, the Layer 8 conference, which is happening here in Rhode Island at, I'm assuming dates will be on my teleprompter. You know what? I'm just going to read the teleprompter because Burgundy reads whatever's on. The Layer 8 conference has 2 tracks of talks on social engineering and open source intelligent gathering. The conference is the only one of its kind and will be on Saturday, June 8th in Providence, Rhode Island. Check out the Mental Health Hackers Village, the tool Lockpick Village, the CTF with Trace Labs, all at layer8conference.com. That's the number 8, layer8conference.com. John Strand will be teaching active defense and cyber deception at Black Hat 2019. Visit blackhat.com/us-training/schedule/index.html # or guide a-guide-2-active-defense-cyber-deception-and-hack-back-14124. Yeah!
Bitly.
I don't know who put that on the teleprompter, but thank you.
Put it there to challenge you.
That was kind of fun. Thank you. I accept the challenge.
I'll do it backwards.
I think you just got fished, Paul.
I think I did. All righty. First order of business, Mr. Rob Shane is a welcome addition to this segment. Rob, welcome to Paul's Security Weekly.
Hey, Paul, how are you?
I'm fantastic. It's nice to have you on the show, Rob. We got a chance to catch up at RSA, actually.
Yeah.
We were at the Bug Crowd party together.
Oh, was that? Yeah, I couldn't remember which one we ended up at, but it was one of those.
It was that one. Maybe others as well. But
there was liquor.
There was liquor involved, and that was the one where Sam had VIP access and I didn't, and everyone made fun of me as
right.
Yeah.
Right.
As well they should.
I accept that. That's fine. So, Rob, you are doing Source Boston coming up May 1st through the 3rd. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, May 1st through 3rd. And there's also some pre-conference trainings on the 29th and 30th of April just before.
What do you got? Are your trainings sold out yet or no?
No, there's still some seats. So so one of them is remember back a couple years ago, I decided every Source conference was going to have a Train the Trainer class before it and an AppSec Risk for Managers class. So it's a one-day AppSec Risk for Managers on Tuesday, which is basically teaching the boss security. And the 2-day Train the Trainer is my specialty class that really isn't offered anywhere else and won't be offered anywhere else this year, where I basically teach people how to do what I do, how to present and train and teach and that kind of stuff.
Awesome. And as far as the talks go for Source Boston, do you have your keynotes lined up?
Yeah, we got all kinds of talks lined up. So we got Richard Steinen and Larry Whiteside are going to be 2 of the keynotes.
Wait, hold on. Richard Steinen that declared several years ago that IDS was dead, and we all poo-pooed him for that, but then realized he was right?
Yeah, that guy, yeah.
Okay, just checking. We had him on the show, actually, where I said that. I'm like, we all poo-pooed you, but you were right.
And we have a mystery keynote that I'm still working on, who's actually seems to be busier than I am, but I'm pretty sure he's going to work out, but I don't want to announce it just yet, but it'll be a good one. And we got a bunch of good talks, the usual kind of mix of business and security. We have Deidre Diamond and Adriana from Cyber Ascent are going to be doing some talks. Deidre's doing a workshop on acquiring or training cyber security talent, and Adriana's going to be doing her job search is broken talk. We're going to have Masha Sadova, who I know you know. She's going to be doing a case study on security education from Autodesk. And we're just going to have a whole bunch of other things. Again, we always try to mix business and technical, and a little bit of personal development, career stuff. There'll be some public speaking workshops like we usually do. Little few surprises up our sleeve now, because one of the cool things is we're doing 3 days this time. So we're actually expanding it back out. I was kind of bursting at the seams with content at 2 days. So we're going to be able to experiment and do some fun stuff. So we've got a lot of good people coming. It's going to be a good time.
And is that in the same venue as it always has been?
Yep. Courtyard Marriott on Tremont Street,
Awesome.
downtown.
How long has Source Boston been running, Rob?
Let's see. The first one we ran was in 2008, and it's run every year since. So this is, I think, the 11th one in Boston. And we've also run them in all the other places as well. Seattle, Dublin, Phoenix, Barcelona, Dublin. I think I said Dublin already.
You did say Dublin. I want to go to Dublin. When is Dublin?
We're gonna have another one. We're gonna have another Dublin one at some point. So basically, last year I did a crazy thing, which is I took on trying to run 5 with a bootstrap team. So I almost lost my mind last year doing that. So this year I'm just running the one in Boston. But
Gotcha.
There will be the other ones will come back again. I just need to rethink the strategy for how to scale those up without going crazy.
Are we volunteering to be at Dublin?
I am pseudo volunteering pending further details for Dublin, because I've always wanted to go to Ireland.
I love Dublin so much, and the actual, the venue's cool. Just the location's great. You will have a blast there. It's a lot of fun. So there absolutely will be another Dublin event, because I want to go back to Dublin. And
will there be like beer at the conference? Is that
at Dublin?
That's a dry state. You didn't know that?
Somehow I don't think so, Doug.
So at Dublin, we after hours we kind of wander over to like the really cool whiskey bar. Just saying.
Yes. Now you're speaking my language, Rob.
I know.
That's awesome. Any other events going on at Source Boston, or do we cover it?
I think that covers the main the highlights. We always have some surprises up our sleeve, and for your listeners, I can offer a discount code if you like.
Yes, I would like that,
and
our
that,
listeners would especially like that.
All right, cool. Well, the conference is coming up quick, so this is kind of a special deal because right now the tickets are $495 for the main conference, and have been for a while, and people have been buying tickets at that price. The 1 day training ticket is also around that price, and the 2 day is $995. If you use the code, it'll be all one word: Security Weekly.
We like that simple. We like
it easy for you this time.
No dashes.
No dashes.
No dashes. Just Security Weekly.
Is that case sensitive? Is it capital S, capital W?
All
little
caps,
S, capital
caps,
E, little E.
Yeah.
So all caps Security Weekly will get you 30% off those tickets. That's a really good deal for those tickets.
You should sign up for that. Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
There's already a bunch of people signed up, and I tend to run the conference and invite people that I want to hang out with for the week, and I like to have smart, fun conversations. So there's a good crew coming. It's going to be a good week. Guys are going to miss out if you're not there.
Well, we will do our best. I can't make any promises. As I said, we've had just a crazy past 5 weeks or so.
Yeah.
Like four.
We were gone every week.
Conferences in 5.5 weeks or something like that. So
it's conference season.
My family and my staff, I'd be really mad if I leave again.
Pack it up.
So, but we'll see what we can do, Rob. I do encourage our listeners to attend. It's a conference we've attended for quite some time, and it's really awesome. It's a good time, and it's how did it start being that mix of business and technical folks, Rob?
That's a good question. So we originally kind of designed it to be business and security. And I think that kind of spawned out of the AdStake days, because that there was a bunch of at stake folks that helped start it. And our whole mission back then was mixing business and security. But after I took it over, I kind of doubled down on that and sprinkled in all the career and personal development stuff on top of that. And so it's kind of evolved into really trying to be that place where we get different groups of people together and get them to actually talk to one another. And that's kind of my specialty, is facilitating conversations.
You should add higher ed to that. I mean, I think that
there
would
are
be
actually a lot of people from
there's a
higher
lot
ed.
of
well, no,
higher
I
ed.
know they go, but there should be components of that to it, I think, as well. I've been seeing that a lot with higher ed's not really ever been engaged in that side of it. It's weird, It's like they have their academic world, and it would be a good addition to that. Because Source is such a good melting
What's the
pot.
academic security conference that's held in Boston?
No, they have some, but I mean,
it's a big one. What's it called? Holy crap, I can't remember it. What is it? Someone help me out.
You think I would know? I don't know.
What is it
I
called?
thought it was Source Boston.
No, no, Rob, help me out. What is it? It's
What are you looking for?
The longest running security conference that's largely held by academics and folks from university presenting.
Yeah, I don't get invited to those.
University research. What's it called?
I can't remember.
All right, a lot of people are screaming that at me in their cars, and I
While you're thinking about that, I did think of one other thing I'm going to do there. Occasionally we will highlight certain topics at the conference, and every once in a while we'll do an entrepreneur track. So this time I'm planning on getting some of the local entrepreneurs and people that are there that have helped start companies before, to do a little bit of an entrepreneur track again, because I always like doing that. I'm a big fan of startups, and I like to support that. So the third day is going to be one of those little extra things we're going to be able to sprinkle in because we have some time.
Awesome. So what kind of topics and what kind of companies are you thinking of for that?
Well, what I'm thinking right now.
Sorry, Usenix.
Oh, of course.
Oh, yeah.
There you go. So right now I'm still kind of piecing that one together, because that's something I've basically been sitting on for a little bit. And I know I'm essentially going to pull in people that I know are already at the conference, but I'm probably going to do some kind of a panel where I just kind of talk through, like, the topic is more interesting than anything. I'm thinking of doing kind of like the mindset of being an entrepreneur. Like, what is it like to, work through those hard problems and deal with it when you get stuck, and how to, kind of along the mental health track that we've been doing, but more of just from a security point of view, from an entrepreneur point of view, rather.
Paul's doing a track called "Firing People When Drunk." What not to do?
We don't make hiring and firing decisions while intoxicated.
I know, that's what the track is about. It's why we shouldn't do this. Lessons learned.
Entrepreneurial advice: do not
get out now.
Do not make any decisions while intoxicated.
I need a prop bottle I can throw or something.
We were just talking about that before the show.
Yeah, it's going to be like Maury Povich on here.
It's just no, not that.
I hate you, Paul. You're not my father.
So that's not Maury Povich. That's the other guy. What's the other guy?
I don't know. I don't watch that stuff.
Oh, what's the other?
You can't make any
Dr.
decisions.
Phil.
No.
Jerry Springer.
Why can't I remember any?
I'm going to pick up the chair.
That is Jerry Springer.
I hate you, Paul.
We get there.
So, Paul, if you can't make any decisions while you're drunk, when do you make decisions?
This is true.
We keep asking ourselves that.
Yes. That's right. Yes.
Sam just tells us in our head, like
Sam and Matt make the decisions.
I actually have a friend that went on the Jerry Springer show and came back and brought me a shirt that said, "I am the father."
Wow. That's awesome. Anything else on Source, Rob, before we get into the news for this week?
I think that covers it. Just the Security Weekly discount code, all one word, Security Weekly, get you 30% off the tickets. Conference coming up very fast. It's still already April 11th, and the conference is on May 1st through 3rd, so still plenty of time to get the tickets, but you better get them now.
Before we get through this second bottle of wine, I wanted to talk about my story number 3, which involves some math. Yahoo strikes a $117.5 million data breach settlement with millions of people. Well, now they say millions of people, so okay, that makes more sense. Millions of people whose email addresses and other personal information were stolen in the largest data breach in history. However, the data breach was 3 billion accounts.
Right.
So if you do the math, like 117 million.5 into 3 billion is 4 cents a user, right? 4 cents a user. Did I do that math right?
0.043.
Yep.
0.043.
Oh.
Yeah. No, it actually was 0.04 something. We'll go with
There's a 4 in
0.043.
it somewhere.
I rounded it off to 0.04, 4 cents a user. So does that mean if you were breached, you get 4 cents? Like, are they going to send you a check?
Well, let me explain how class action lawsuits work.
Please do, Doug.
First, a law firm says, wow, we could make a lot of money here. Because the law firm says the more users there are, we don't care what you get.
I feel like this is the drunk history episode on the history of class action lawsuits.
And then my
there's
uncle
someone reenacting what Doug is saying right now.
And then they came into my bedroom with where did the bad men touch your data? Show me on the Linux Penguin.
That is the name for this episode.
Where did the bad man touch your data?
Sensitive.
But
where did that man touch your sensitive?
yeah, is your data sensitive? Can we touch it? But the way class action lawsuits work, a law firm identifies a problem. They go out and they look for the number of people that were affected by this problem, because that multiplied by the amount results in a large number, 117 million. Mm-hmm. The law firm gets 1/3 of this information, of this number.
Oh, so it's
so the law firm is going to rack up $40 million from this. You will get a check for 0.043 cents going, there you go.
No, but if the law firm is taking 1/3 of it, isn't the...
Oh, yeah, you won't even get 0.043 cents. You'll get 0.012 cents.
Oh,
here's your 0.012 cents. Thank you very much. Now justice has been served. And then they divide up the spoils and have a big party.
Do they say it like that when they call me on the phone?
Oh, they sure do. Oh,
Can
yeah.
you say now justice? How did you say it? Now justice?
Now justice has been served.
I mean, that's worth like 2 cents in my opinion, at least. Just to have a phone call where Doug says that to me.
Dial 1-800, has your data been touched? Has it been touched in a sensitive way?
Oh, God. I just somehow knew it was going to just go right.
Another dead soldier.
Any more comments on the Yahoo settlement?
Yahoo!
I'd love to get my 1.2 cents just to make them cut the check, which will cost them more to issue than anything
There
else.
you go. That's my strategy. I use that with several of my clients. It's like, do you realize this transaction cost you more than I actually earned?
What I want to know is they're going to round up or round down, and where do all those fractions of the pennies go?
Ooh, they go back to the law firm, yeah. They keep that too.
Now, if I get to smash a printer with a baseball bat, that's worth way more than 4 cents in my opinion.
Yeah. They should let you do that. You should ask for that in the settlement.
Just have Yahoo send me their old printers so I can smash them with a baseball bat.
I'll take the printers in lieu of cash.
I'm good.
Yeah.
I'm good.
PC load letter.
So, let's see. Microsoft has pulled back a patch after some PCs are rendered, according to the article, which, of course, you will know comes from the Register, are rendered super secure and unbootable following an update. Of course, it's all...
Unspootable?
Unspootable. Unbootable.
Unspootable?
Spootable, bootable. It is all a bit unfortunate since patches include security fixes that administrators should really...
Who's gonna play the role of Paul on the drunk security episode?
Oh, me.
No, I don't play myself. Someone else.
I know you don't play yourself.
Hold on. I don't play myself. I don't describe a history event that involves myself.
No, we're just...
No, we're going to do the history of Security Weekly.
You're laying down the
interesting,
soundtrack right now.
I don't know I'm all that significant in the history of computer security. However, I would be describing someone else.
Paul, you're slurring your words. You're laying down the soundtrack right now.
Yes, but I don't play myself. That's my point.
We have a web show. Yeah.
It would be interesting if I were to describe the history of Security Weekly through drunk history.
It would be awesome. I think that should be the first episode.
It might be interesting to do it sober history of Security Weekly.
That'd make it. Yeah.
That might be even more funny.
Good evening.
That would be just horrifying.
And now the news.
Segment from the dumpster.
So, of course, the Microsoft patches, right? Getting back to the stories.
Oh, the spootable.
Gentlemen.
So my question is simply, how does that happen?
How does what happen?
How does Microsoft put out patches that not brick, but pretty close to brick systems?
Yeah, so they break stuff. Now, the interesting thing is that this roll-up had security updates in it, and when you install it, your endpoint security software interacts with it in a negative way, which causes your system to crash. So you have to boot into safe mode, disable your endpoint security software from Sophos and others, then reboot, back out the patch, and re-enable your endpoint security software. I mean, just a complete nightmare. However, I find it interesting that a Microsoft update causes a system to crash that had endpoint security software. Could an attacker replicate this condition and therefore cause basically an exploit that is a denial of service vulnerability?
I think so.
This is just Microsoft's method for making sure that Windows Defender becomes an absolute success.
Yes.
Another great theory, Larry.
No,
Well,
I love it because it's a conspiracy.
It's spot
theory.
on. No, I think that's exactly right.
And the corollary is when does a system patch get regarded effectively as malware
Now, you're saying I'm slurring my speech, Jeff.
or ransomware?
Yeah, ransomware is a good word for it. You must install Defender now.
You must install
And
this
you must do
Microsoft
it through
patch
Bing.
now.
I mean, in Microsoft's defense, you can't test every endpoint security product and see if it has a negative reaction to
No,
your
so they
patch.
tested it with their vanilla system running Windows Defender, and
And,
then,
yeah, Windows Defender
But
works
Paul, the
great.
answer is the answer is yes, they can. They're Microsoft. They have more money than God.
I was going to say, if Microsoft can't do it, who can?
They could do it, but they don't want to do it.
Cost
Fair enough.
money.
Can we do the drunk history of Microsoft? Give me your DOS.
Developers.
CPM my ass.
See, that's another episode. We get this whole series put together. The drunk history of technology.
Yeah, I don't want anyone to copy my idea though.
Oh, it's too late now. It's out there. It's like we're done. Yeah.
Yeah. Anyway, Bitcoin mining ban has been considered in China. What I found interesting about this article is that a notice was published online in Mandarin by the country's economic planning agency. I like how they say in Mandarin. Why would they publish it in any other language but anyway? They stated that virtual currency mining activities, including the production of Bitcoin to a list of industries, could be shut down. The suggestion is that the power consumed by the industry contributes to pollution and waste resources. Pollution and waste resources. Right. Nothing to do with freedom or anonymity.
So that's why you just mine your Bitcoin in AWS in a region that's outside of China.
Right.
Correct.
Let somebody else to soak up the pollution.
Exactly.
They have been very focused on pollution in China, I'm telling you. I was there, and I mean, it was like
But do you
dramatic.
really think the motivation in China is pollution, or is it that the freedom that Bitcoin potentially allows?
I mean,
right?
it could be pollution too, though. I mean, I know
currency is kind of like a staple to a communist regime.
it is.
No?
And they don't like that. But I really do think that there sometimes the Chinese government is wanting to. They want to be a world leader. They want to look like a world leader. They want to be the first world country now, and they want to say, "Look at us, we're the best." And they cleaned up all this pollution in Beijing. I was there, and they got the Olympics coming there. They put up all these creepy towers out in the countryside that are, I think, probably scrubbing the air to get because the carbon content in the air was way down. I didn't start coughing for days. Usually, you go to China.
Legit question: is that from manufacturing? This producing the pollution?
Energy and all that stuff because they were burnt. Well, that and coal because they had people heating their houses with coal, and that put all kinds of carbon in the air. And if you went there in the winter, it was just like devastating. I mean, you like walk out of the airport and be like, and now it's like wow, it's like cleaner than places in the U.S. and they're really trying to clean it up. So, and they do. I will say that I've seen them do stuff where the government suggests something. And I know they don't like Bitcoin, just like we don't like Bitcoin. The U.S. government doesn't like Bitcoin either because they look at it and they go, wow, we don't like the idea that you get paid in Bitcoin. Who's going to pay taxes then? And so the Chinese don't like that, but they also want to clean things up. And they come in and they go, how do we cut down power use? And unlike, it's a totalitarian state. So the government says, we suggest that you stop using Bitcoin. And then what happens is it's how they got people to quit smoking. They said, smoking is bad. We suggest that you stop smoking. People that want to have careers, stop smoking. Because if you keep smoking, your boss and the political officer goes, he's still a smoker. Maybe he should be transferred to Uyghur to work in the radioactive tractor factory. And, either way, you're out of the way. And I could see, I see both sides of it. I definitely think they don't like the idea of Bitcoin, but they definitely control transactions a lot more heavily than the United States ever dreamed of.
Sure.
You have to get a permit to do anything, and so they kind of know you're in business. But they want to stop pollution because they get the Olympics. They get the Winter Olympics coming to outside of Beijing, and they don't want
They had the Summer Olympics when...
Yeah, but they got the Winter Olympics coming up, too. And
Interesting.
They don't want people, showing athletes walking off the plane coughing up blood from the, from the pollution. So that always looks bad.
Interesting insights, Doug. Are you a Chinese spy? Is that... anyway.
Hey, let's...
I love
let's
the note
talk
is silence when I ask that question.
You can either confirm
nor deny.
This is a Chinese approach to it. I don't say anything.
Larry, confirming or denying serious flaws in WPA3 leave Wi-Fi vulnerable.
That one.
Oh, he's holding his head in his hands already. Now, as I read, which I don't believe until Larry explains it to me, all things wireless and Wi-Fi security. The first is to perform a man-in-the-middle attack, which essentially tells the clients to downgrade to WPA2. The other is to set up an impersonation attack. I set up a WPA2 access point that has the same SSID as a WPA3 access point, and therefore I'm able to execute attacks. Is this and Beck Larson, by the way, who was on Enterprise Security Weekly, we were talking about the Enterprise Security news, and she's like, "Oh, it's so that news article is so fluffy. Like I just want to pet it." Is this fluff that we just want to pet like a cat or a dog, or does this have some basis in reality, Larry?
Yeah. Oh no, absolutely some basis in reality. And the gentleman in one of his cohorts that did the research on this and effectively broke the part here was Matthew Van Oof, who also developed the crack attack, which was arguably one of the most devastating attacks against WPA2 of all varieties, and broke that. So the thing that I find that is really interesting about this is that WPA2 was broken by Matthew. Matthew went and looked at WPA3 as created by the Wi-Fi Alliance. They have no real power. They're a certification body. And the Wi-Fi Alliance, when they created WPA3, had this really great opportunity to demand all of these things to certify that your device was WPA3 compliant. The ability for doing opportunistic wireless encryption, the removal of WPS, which is horribly weak for distributing keys, new encryption types, a bunch of different stuff. But the only thing they require is OWE, which makes your passwords, your pre-shared keys, resistant to offline brute force attacks, which, because of poor implementation by a less than smart technology group, Matthew actually broke before anybody's actually really implemented it. They had an opportunity to do such a great thing, and now it's even broken before people implement it.
But better to break it before people implement it so we can fix it before implementation, right?
Yep, exactly. Now, but one of the other ones that was interesting that was also disclosed as part of that is that with OWE, opportunistic wireless encryption, that there was a component that would prevent access points from receiving too many requests for active brute force attacks. But what it turns out is if you do too many active brute force attacks, it actually denial services the access point. Whoops. So it has the opposite effect.
Remember how many years ago when Wi-Fi was brand new and all the security professionals said, "Don't do it, don't go to Wi-Fi. Everything needs to stay wired because Wi-Fi is insecure." And then we got used to the idea, and because it's secure and it's much better. Or is it?
No, Jeff, it's interesting. My thinking was along the same lines. I was thinking back to when we had 802.11, and it was horribly insecure. Then we had WEP, and it was horribly insecure. And the adoption of Wi-Fi was much less back then, but whoever was implementing that at the time was really vulnerable. And not just the access points, but the clients, right? And then as we progressed forward, we had WPA, and it took a number of years for all that legacy 802.11 gear to basically be deprecated and not in use anymore. However, now we've got so much gear that's WPA2. How long is it going to take before it's WPA3 and we don't have to worry about these legacy vulnerabilities?
Yeah. So Paul, it is still all 802.11 of its varieties, but 802.11 ABGN with an open wireless network, and those have not gone away. They're still incredibly prevalent. I mean, you do a lot of traveling. You go to a hotel and you use a guest network or one of those hotel networks, and it is an open wireless network, just like we had back in the day, the first wireless networks. And the second point is, you're absolutely right. How long is it going to take for folks to start migrating to the latest and greatest? And WPA3 has been out for a year. And I know of no one that has implemented it and have not encountered it in any testing in the last year.
But my point is, we say the solution is migrate to the latest and greatest, and then we find out that the latest and greatest is just as insecure as what it's replacing.
It's true.
And those things cost a lot of money. I mean, you go to an organization and say, replace all your WAPs with an upgrade, and it's like, okay, gee, I've got 2,000 WAPs on site. And
I worked for a university. I mean, if you go to my LinkedIn profile, what university I worked. It was a 144-acre campus, and I was involved with some of the first Wi-Fi deployments. Think about how many access points in the infrastructure to support a 144-acre campus, and then realize that university is not the largest university even in the U.S., right? They're much larger. Ohio State is one of the largest universities in
Western
the country.
Michigan.
Yeah, Western, right? How many access points do they have to support?
God, I don't even...
Is it 100,000?
I have no idea, but I mean, you just walk through your hotel sometime and count the number of access points you see on the way to the elevator, and then start multiplying that by the number of floors in the building and the number of wings in the building, and you're going, okay, I got to replace every single one of those. Not to mention pulling them down, putting new ones up, hanging them, all that stuff. I mean,
thankfully, the cabling, the earlier deployments did have to do the cabling for those access points. If the cabling is there, it is a little easier. But now, Larry, my question for you is, to go from WPA 2 to 3, is that a software or hardware update, or I imagine that varies depending on the implementation?
Or software.
It should all be a software update. It's all software. And the interesting thing is that very much WPA3 and all of the wireless technologies, the wireless vendors are very much on top of and will push that to their access point. They get pre-release information and they have the software ready to go. The day the standard is released, you can do the update to have WPA3 on your APs. It may be 2 to 3 years before it's supported in your client, especially by default by the OS.
Good point. Yeah, I'm a 100% Linux user now. Yay! Yep. I actually physically rejoiced. But by the time I see WPA3 right on Linux, that could be longer than Windows or Mac OS.
Yeah, because the wireless stack under Linux requires so much else to happen first, and that you're going to be way behind the game. Mm-hmm. I mean, if you think about Apple, my daily driver. We can go down the store, buy a WPA3 access point right now. But even with the latest updates on my Mac, if I try to configure security to the best of my knowledge, there's no option for WPA3 for me to configure an access point that way.
Yeah.
And it's been out
there
for a
is
year.
An option.
There is?
It's called a modem. It's a modem. I mean, we call it something different today. We call it tethering or hotspot. I still chuckle every time I use this thing as a hotspot because I'm like, shit, I'm using a modem all over again.
Well, it's a great point, Jeff. When I travel, I don't use Wi-Fi. I tether with my phone on Linux, which works phenomenally well in my experience, and has for some time, which was actually kind of shocking to me, that when I tether my Android phone to my Linux computer, it works great, so I don't have to use Wi-Fi. When I travel. As we know, when we go to security conferences, you want to disable your Wi-Fi, you just don't want to go there.
Right.
Now the question is, Paul, when you tether, does your phone VPN to a VPN provider, whether it be through the Security Weekly Studios or something
Sure.
like?
I mean, it could. I don't use that level of security. However, the protocols I use tend to be fairly secure. Right?
Mine does. I use VPN. I do the same thing.
You've done a lot of international travel.
I use VPN all the time on my phone. I use VPN on my laptop. I mean, it's all automatic, so it's always connecting to the VPN. And
you just put a ridiculous amount of wine.
Yeah,
in my
well,
glass.
it's drunk Security Weekly history. So we're going to do the history of WP.
After the show, drunk security.
802.11 will be fully discussed at a later point.
We're going to talk about the history of Wi-Fi.
But I mean, I use VPN. I use tethering because I just don't want to get involved in the local Wi-Fi mess. I was just in Moscow and we were using data all the time.
You go to places like
China, Moscow,
in
Russia. I was just there.
You don't want to use the Ethernet network, or
no? I was using I was only using VPN over cellular the whole time I was there. And
hey Doug.
Yep.
Hey Doug. In Soviet Russia, internet hacks you.
Yeah, that's exactly right. I felt it too. It was like yeah.
But you get free shots of vodka when you.
Nothing is free in Russia.
You pay for it some way.
In Russia, vodka drinks you.
And that's different from America. How?
Did you get off the plane and go, "I am the machine"? Because that's what I would have done.
No, I got off the plane and go, "Please don't put me in the gulag." Hey, you know, it was harder to get out of Russia than to get into Russia. They literally took a photograph of every single page of my passport. Every single, even the blank ones. They took a photo.
When you were leaving?
When I was leaving, I was standing at the window. She took a camera and took a photo of every single page of my passport. They inspected the thread sewing my passport together with some kind of fluorescent light. Then they handed it to another person who did the entire process again and went through. They actually were using some kind of light on passport stamps I had from like China and other places, and they were mumbling in Russian the whole time, and I was like, all I could hear was "going to the gulag." It was like I kept hearing that over and over again. Wow, Larry got a lot cooler looking all of a sudden.
What's up, Doug?
Back in the USSR.
Tyler stepping in for Larry Pesce.
Tyler's got something to say.
That's right.
Enlighten us, Tyler.
I do. Really, each one of us has come to this point because we've made decisions in our life, and those decisions have led us right here.
To doing the Paul Security Weekly podcast?
I know what happened to the 2 6-packs of beer.
Are you going to flip a coin and ask us to call it?
Yeah. Tyler, you're drunk. But
Absolutely not, actually.
it was. Rob seems to breed us being really drunk. My story number 5, regulating the IoT impact and new considerations for cybersecurity and government regulations. Now, the thing that I pulled from this story, we've talked about IoT a lot. I did want to talk about the California law, SB-327, to be put into law in 2020. The law requires that manufacturers of a device that connects directly or indirectly to the internet must be equipped with, air quotes, reasonable security features that are designed to prevent unauthorized access, modification, or information disclosure. The bill aims to protect consumers as a first step, but could also be potentially applied to larger enterprise solutions with future revisions. Largely, I share my peer.
Wait. So they think the low-hanging fruit here is protecting consumers and not the enterprise. That's what they're saying.
They say consumers as a first step, but could.
Yeah, the
language is very. Yes, you're correct, Jeff. The language is very fluffy. They say my least favorite words in the English language, but could also potentially be applied to larger enterprise solutions.
No way a lawyer wrote that.
Right.
This is not fluffy. I say this is gloppy language.
We could pet it and it purrs or whatever, right?
I want you to die, Mr. Bond.
Yes. Now, what's interesting...
but I'm serious. No, wait, Paul. I'm serious. They're thinking that the consumer side of things is the is the entry level, and what's more complex is enterprise. Stop and think about that.
Jeff, being a PCI, like compliance is your bailiwick. Reasonable security. Jeff, what does that mean?
Not a fucking thing.
Yeah, see? Like, if PCI had dictated reasonable security, Jeff would be like, what the fuck does that mean? Right?
Exactly.
Like that's most security professionals' objection to this regulation in California. All good intentions, with something about good intentions.
But I can give you more of an answer though. I mean, in the early days of PCI, the customers that I would work with, they always wanted to know, what is our competition doing? The perception was reasonable was, no more, no less than what everybody else in our space is doing. Because when the bad stuff happens, if we can demonstrate that, well, we were doing what everybody was doing, this is what we considered to be reasonable, then they wouldn't get in trouble, they wouldn't get fined, they wouldn't get, whatever
now,
the
Jeff,
consequences
this
were.
brought me
Nobody
back
wants to be first, but nobody wants to be last either. That's kind of how that works.
That's correct, Rob. Now, Jeff, this also brought me back to our conversation yesterday on Enterprise Security Weekly, in that it says connects directly or indirectly to the internet. And we talked at length yesterday on Enterprise Security Weekly about PCI, the external scans versus the internal scans. This seems to go in a similar direction, Jeff, as in connected to the internet, or it's on my network, but there's also like workstations that have users that are browsing the internet, which would be kind of indirectly connected as well.
Well, yeah, I was simply going to ask, what the heck does indirectly connected to the internet mean?
That's what I was thinking. You could argue that anything is indirectly connected to the internet in 2019.
It's a good point.
I mean, we're all indirectly. What's the 6 degrees of separation? Is that Kevin Bacon?
Kevin Bacon.
We're all indirectly connected to Kevin Bacon.
The internet.
I had a very interesting interpretation. Like, if you had a phone that was connected to the internet, and someone compromised your phone, and that phone could also connect to a Wi-Fi network that was independent of your 4G connection, right? That maybe wasn't connected to the internet. I guess indirectly is kind of weird.
Well, here's my take.
Go
ahead, Jeff. No, you go ahead.
We were just talking about the idea of using the phone as a tethering device. Does that mean our laptop is indirectly connected to the internet? Because we're not going right to a TCP connection. We're going over cellular. So is that a definition of indirect?
I think this is what happens when regulations and laws are passed without consulting with those that actually know what they're talking about.
This was what I was going to say. So here's my take on it. There is real security. That means somebody sits down and they actually analyze it and they fix it. And there is perceived security. And perceived security votes. Real security, nobody understands it. I mean, we're talking about us. We're talking about just general public. And they want to pass laws that people are concerned about, that people can understand. And they can say, we're doing something about this. And it doesn't matter if it makes any sense or not, as long as people perceive it improves the situation.
It's a good point.
I mean, a lot of those laws have always been like that, right? I mean, HIPAA had some teeth, but there was a lot of vagary to it. When PCI came out, there was a training requirement. I remember trying to implement it, and I was like, you can't implement this the way it's written. You had basically the way it was written was you could implement anything you wanted to, as long as it seemed remotely reasonable from a professional security point of view. You'd get away with it. They're always like that.
Well, look at Sarbanes-Oxley. I mean, it basically said you should do good things because voters were down there going, I want these sons of bitches stopped. And and politicians,
was that Enron?
Enron, yeah. And I mean, so the people in the Congress were sitting there going, we need a law, and they hand it off to somebody else, and that person's going, I don't know, I got 35 things to do today, but I need to write some code about this, and they're like, security's important, and then they pass a law.
That landed on my radar when SOX was passed. They're like, we need a pen test like that.
Yeah,
that helps us with SOX. I'm like, okay, but I don't. Okay.
They don't want a pen test. They want you to check the box mark pen test conducted.
Yep.
That's literally, that's what they wanted. You don't even know how many people call me and you're like, so what would that involve? And you're like, well, you'd have to come on site and you'd have to develop some scripts and you'd have to actually test it. What would it be like if you just say evaluated it, say over the phone? Like, well, for $50,000, I'll say you're safe right now. And they're like, that check is written, sir. Where would you like it mailed? Like, I'm not a doctor, but I play one on television.
But you are. Never.
Oh, I am a doctor. Yeah.
What's television? What are you talking about?
I play one on Netflix.
Okay.
Oh, we should talk about WikiLeaks and Julian Assange. So for those that may have missed this headline, Julian Assange, of course, the founder of WikiLeaks, got into a lot of trouble. There was sex crimes allegations. There was conspiracy for hacking and leaking sensitive information. Espionage. He escaped into basically sought asylum from the Ecuadorian government in the Ecuadorian.
I'm acting it out while Paul's telling it.
Yeah, he's acting it out. So Julian Assange went to Ecuador because he got buddy with the Ecuadorian government, but he couldn't go straight to Ecuador. So the closest place he would go to was London. Turns out there's an Ecuadorian embassy in London, which is where he hid out for a while. Now, he was cool.
And for a while, you mean how long?
Like years. But he was cool for a while. There was like this incident where he was leaking information, kind of pissed off Ecuador. They butted heads. The U.S. government was on his case for the entire time until recently when the Ecuadorian government said, Julian Assange, we no longer grant you asylum, and therefore you're on your own. In which time the U.S. government said, aha, we can go get Julian Assange. So they went to London, they got Julian Assange, and they arrested him. Game over, he's being prosecuted. He faces 5 years in prison.
Who is Paul pretending to be right now? Because this is.
I'm not pretending to be. You got to watch Drunk History, dude. I am playing Paul.
You're acting it
Doug
out.
is playing the role of Julian Assange. I am drunk describing what happened to Julian Assange. That's how it works. No, you don't throw. If I throw up, then you throw up.
Oh, okay.
We definitely live in the strangest timeline, that's for sure.
Yes. Did I capture that pretty?
No, I thought it was
fairly accurately.
Really,
I mean, that's pretty.
Yeah, pretty much.
My whole question: why did the Ecuadorian government all of a sudden wake up one day and go, Julian Assange is a complete asshole. We should not give him asylum anymore. Why? I don't know why. Does anyone have any insights?
Because the cigarette-smoking man, Raoul Bloodworth, was sitting at a table going, we have to get him out of there now.
That was. There's actually a Drunk History episode about Watergate where there was the cigarette smoke. That's where
Raoul Bloodworth.
What do they call him? The cigarette-smoking man in X-Files. And
Raoul Bloodworth.
No, but there's
Smoking Man.
No,
he was just the smoking man.
Anyway.
He was Smoking Man.
Nobody knows why the Ecuadorian government magically woke up one day and said Julian Assange no longer has asylum. He did something maybe to piss them off. I don't know. They brokered some deal with the U.S.
He stopped being useful.
A conspiracy theory could be that the U.S. government went to Ecuador and said, hey, you got this Julian Assange guy. If you stop giving him asylum, we'll give you $1 million, or whatever it is, or there's some kind of bartering agreement. And then Ecuador goes, yeah, you know what? He kind of is an asshole anyway. So you know what? You guys can have him as long as you give us like millions of dollars.
The flip side of that is that he was doing what they wanted.
Mm-hmm.
And the cigarette smoking man is calling him going, now I want you to say this, and I want WikiLeaks to say that. And he started going, I don't think I'm going to do that anymore. You know, and they went, okay, well, then let's play it that way. And then he gets kicked out of the Ecuadorian embassy the next day because a couple of phone calls were made. And they're like, yeah, if you don't do this, we're going to send in troops. We'll be forced to invade. And Ecuador went, we're out. Yeah. Actually, it wouldn't be that sophisticated. It would be more like, we won't sign this trade agreement with Belgium agreed to.
Deep Throat is the cigarette smoking man.
Oh, no. Deep Throat is
Smoking
another
Man
whole
is
character.
X-Files.
Deep Throat is not the cigarette smoking.
Watergate. Deep Throat is Watergate.
Yes, Deep Throat was also a character.
Deep Throat was on X-Files too.
It was on X-Files
too. In the first season of X-Files, yes. Deep Throat is the guy who's advising Mulder behind the scenes. But the cigarette smoking man is a different person. He's the conspiracy guy that's working for the government that's telling the FBI what to do. So there's two different people there.
Yes, you're right.
And Deep Throat was also Watergate. Yeah, so that was the.
If you haven't watched it, the drunk history episode about Watergate is awesome. It's awesome.
Who are they interviewing?
Hey, does Deep Throat have anything to do with the Thanksgiving incident?
No, it does not, Larry. Completely independent, mutually exclusive. Yes. Thank you for that reference.
Or is it?
Or is it? Anyway, so no one knows why. I'm curious. If any
is that all we're gonna say about Julian Assange? Is we don't know anything?
There's not much else to say.
Well, they
right?
drug him out of the building, and he looked crazy. He looked like the Unabomber when they drug him out of the building.
We know what happened. We just don't know why. Like, I couldn't find anything that said why.
You're not going to know. Yeah, that's going to be. That was all back channel stuff, I think.
Yeah.
I mean, that's
for sure.
That's people making phone calls from Washington to an intermediary who's making phone calls to Ecuador and London, and they're going, look, we'll do this if you do that, and then we'll get an oil well down there.
But now the other interesting question is Snowden shitting his pants right now?
Snowden shitting his pants right now because he's going, I'm next.
Right?
So... And maybe if you want to make it a really deep dive conspiracy, they did this to Assange to get Snowden to do what they wanted to do because they're going, now you want to be next?
Right.
We got a whole set of jumper cables that
oh my God, that is
Snowden
like next level conspiracy theory. I love it.
Yep. I mean, think about that. That's like gaming there. I mean, that's like you working that thing going, and we want Snowden to come out and say this and this and this, and he's going, I don't want to say that, and they're going, you're going to say it. Because if you don't say it, watch what happens to Assange. We're going to have a national genital electrocution of Assange leaked on a couple of sites where you're going to see the electrodes going on the bollocks.
I can just hear Snowden going, calling the bluff, going, yeah, right. And then, like, reading the news the next day, going, oh, shit.
And Assange's going,
they got Julian, motherfucker, I'm next.
That's right. And they're going, and then the phone rings right after that, and they're going, you probably want to agree with the terms that we've set.
Right.
And he's going, yes, sir, I do want to agree with those terms. Yes, I would like very much to do that.
Now, where is Snowden? Is Snowden still in Russia?
Yeah, as far as I know.
Yep.
Is that your keynote? Now, here's my other conspiracy theory that Edward Snowden is the keynote for Source Boston.
Mm.
You heard it here first.
To come up with that one.
I just want to see Jeff in the background in that Assange torture video. So it's a guy that kind of looks like Jeff with like a balaclava on.
Jeff's in the back with the box of salt.
Yeah.
Did you ever see the Brotherhood where it's like stabbing the guy in the leg and he comes out and like yells at someone else and he grabs the box of salt off the table and walks back into the room? It's like the most disturbing scene in that whole series.
Yeah, we did used to have a guy at one of the security companies I used to work for who was one of his favorite sayings is there are things you can know and things you can't know. Mm-hmm. And this is one of those things you just can't know. You just can't know. You'll never know why exactly, what went down before Assange got pulled out of that building. Like you can't.
It's possible to know if you have a clearance.
You'll know what happened in the Mueller report before you find out what happened to Assange.
You'd have to have like a code word above top secret, designation that nobody knows, and then you'd have to have a good reason, and then they'd probably take you out and shoot you afterwards.
Mm-hmm.
There's no way like some shit went down that we don't know about. No, had to have.
Yeah.
So I have hacker trivia question for everyone.
Oh,
so, you may not be all old enough to remember this, but there used to be a time that Doug maybe. I mean, Doug, yes. Larry, maybe. Paul,
Doug, yes.
There was a
all
time.
You British people.
There was a time when Nmap didn't exist. Okay.
Yay!
Does anybody remember what was used for port scanning before there was Nmap? Pop quiz.
Satan, the system administrator's tool for administering networks.
You could also use Netcat with the right flag.
That's not the answer. Well, yeah, that was another one.
Netcat. Everything was Unix back then. Netcat wasn't a thing. I mean, it was, but it wasn't.
Satan ran on Unix.
So fast forward. The answer is what we used to use for port scanning back in the day before Nmap was a tool called Strobe.
I remember that.
Yeah.
Fuck, I should have known that. God damn it.
Who wrote Strobe?
Oh God, that I don't know.
Yeah, no idea.
Oh,
Julian Assange.
The conspiracy is complete. Hey, Strobe just came up on my laptop.
That was pretty
just
topical trivia, man.
I'm impressed, Jeff.
Spot on,
I am
Jeff.
impressed.
I'm telling you.
I've been giving a talk lately on the origins of pen testing at NSA, and when I was putting the talk together, I was kind of like, what tools did we use back then? Because I wanted to get the story
You know
straight.
what, though, Jeff? The drunk security episode about strobe would be hilarious.
It would be hilarious.
It would be.
But
hilarious.
I found a presentation that I gave many years ago that listed all the tools of the trade, and I was going through, and it's like, oh, strobe! I'd forgotten all about strobe. I remember strobe. That's what we used, and I was like, well, when did strobe come out? Because Nmap didn't come out till 1997. I left the DoD in '96.
I see chat bubbles on Tyler and Larry. They're like, yeah, we still use strobe. Like, strobe is an interesting tool. Yeah.
Strobe's a cool tool.
My chat bubbles for Larry and Tyler were, are we out of beer? I don't know.
Strobe
that's more
would
accurate.
work better if it was written in
look
Python.
at that. They're like, we got a couple of beers left.
But anyway, so I looked it up and I saw that Julian Assange wrote it, and I was like, crap, that's why his name sounds so familiar. Because when you launched Strobe, which back in the day it was all command line, so it would pop up this little
was that
screen.
like was Strobe written in like Perl or something?
I want to say it was Perl or C.
Yeah,
I think it was C.
It was C.
Yeah,
I would say it was C.
Did you have?
But it would say Strobe version whatever. You had to compile it, written by Julian Assange. Because when Julian Assange has been in the news the last couple of years, I always knew the name, but I didn't know why. And it wasn't until I saw that, and I was like, oh. Every time you launched Strobe, you would see his name because it would come up with like a little title page. This is Strobe version whatever, written by Julian Assange. Wow. So. There is a connection between Julian.
So I just double checked, just for the record. Netcat was actually originally a Unix program, my friend.
In what year? Because Strobe was written in 1995, according to my.
Oh, I'm not saying it wasn't a Unix. I'm not saying it wasn't a Unix program.
The reason I know that is because it was written by Hobbit, who used to work at NetStake. He is like ultimate Unix guy. Like, there's no way he would have written that for Windows on purpose.
Now, where is he today, Rob? He needs to be a guest on the show.
You know what's funny? The last time I saw him, this is funny. I ran into him at a Pink Floyd cover band in Assembly Square before they revamped it and made it a new thing. And it was called Pink Void. And it was actually an awesome show, but he was doing the lighting for them as a side thing. I don't know what the hell he's doing now. I'd love to run into him.
So, Rob, you're the MC for the drunk security episode about Hobbit.
So my question is, where's RFP?
Rainforest Puppy. That's another.
That's a good question.
Who's going to do the drunk security episode about
Rainforest Puppy?
Wow.
But the question at hand is, when was Netcat written? When was it first published?
According to the internet, 95.
Which was the same year as Strobe was
I just know that was what back before we had Nmap, that was what we used to use. So.
Yep. Yeah. I was a Strobe
Call
guy. But we had Nmap. I mean, I remember using Netcat back then, and I guess the Windows version was just NC.
Well, I think we can all agree on it was that Nmap was a far superior port scanner to anything that we had.
95 was the year you went with the cornrows, right, Jeff?
It was the year I graduated high school, all right?
The cornrows was more than 1 year.
Your kids were like in elementary school or junior high back then, but
Hey, there's something about this episode that really disappoints me.
What's that, Larry?
Jeff hasn't mentioned PCI once.
No, he has. We talked about PCI. We
had a whole conversation about PCI. What are you talking about?
I don't bring it up anymore.
I think it's when you left the room.
Yeah, it was one of those times when you and Tyler were changing clothes or something.
I was probably changing my underwear.
Just pants. Just to be clear.
You guys aren't wearing pants. They're not changing anything. There's nothing.
I didn't say they were changing pants.
They got shirts on. That's it.
But they had different shirts on earlier.
Like maybe socks or knee highs or thigh. I don't know.
Dude, you know what? I haven't worn a shirt in years. What's wrong with you? I've been fully tattooed the whole time.
Larry went with the blackout tattoos, so all his tattoos are reverses.
Larry, what is Dragon Blood, or did we talk about this already?
That's the WPA3 stuff.
That's the WPA3 thing.
I didn't realize it had a name and a logo and
it has a name. It's serious if it has a name.
We talked about Russia, Doug, but there are censorship issues.
I just tossed that in there because they started saying they just when I was there, they just passed a law that said that you can't criticize the government. that any public criticism of the government was punishable by prison, which was nothing really new.
I mean, it's kind of in line with China and Cuba.
Yeah, but they just started this thing.
They've never written it down before?
No, they had not written it down. It was just kind of like, understood. And then this censorship thing's the same way. They started saying that there's a bill working its way through the whatever it is, and they're going to pass a law saying that they have to control content on the internet to protect citizens from misinformation and all this kind of stuff, and which is something China did, a long time ago. So they're going to start blocking sites. They're going to block access to certain sites that the government decides, and if you try to get to them, you get some problems.
The last story I want to talk about is actually kind of serious. It's an interesting segue back into actual information security. Is that there was a survey done by Tanium, and we all know how I feel about surveys. However, when I went through these results, I did find one that I thought was worthy of talking about. And they interviewed or surveyed 500 CISOs, which I think is good. I think, and Rob and others, like for a survey, you need at least 400 or 500 people to really have any results to talk about. That's true, right?
That's pretty fair.
Yeah, so
depends on the population, but go ahead.
Well,
sure.
yeah.
So 500 CISOs, but there's lots of stats in here. But the one that I liked was that the majority, 80% of CIO and CISOs, having found out that a critical update or patch they thought had been deployed had actually updated on all devices, had not actually updated on all devices, I should say, leaving the business exposed as a result. I was like, wow, like I lived this, Jeff lived this at Tenable, right? I think this is interesting and a problem that's only going to get worse as technology becomes easier to deploy, applications become easier to deploy, and the cost of technology and deployment goes down.
I'll loop that all the way back to something we talked about in the first segment. People don't understand their networks, they don't understand their devices, and they don't have accurate representations of what's in their enterprise. You go to almost any...
It is a survey that backs it up.
Yeah, I mean, you go to almost any
I'm the first one to pick on surveys.
And you say, what have you got? I don't even know how many times I've been called by somebody, and they go, oh, yeah, and you say, what have you got? And they go, oh, we've got like 36 Windows boxes, and then you go out there, and it's like, well, what's in that room? And they're like, oh, I don't know. What is
think
that?
Tyler
That's
and
like
Larry...
every project, right? It's like most companies I've seen have no clue what they have.
No, they pull out a network diagram that says 1987 on it.
But Tyler and Larry have probably done collectively over 500 pen tests where you've exploited something on some type of asset that the company had no idea they had. Is that fairly accurate?
AKA elevator, printers, things exposed that they don't know.
Oh yeah, no, it's not just we've done that, on some asset they don't know about. It's probably every goddamn time, and in excess of 1,000 pen tests a piece. So,
right?
Yeah, don't minimize it. It's a shit show.
Go look.
It never gets old, does it?
Any of them.
Me too. I mean, most
of the pen tests I've done have the crowning jewels have been accessed through something that I've exploited. That at the end of the day, they're like, oh, I didn't know the marketing department stood that up, or I didn't know someone had that access point there, or I didn't know someone had this or that, right?
I did an assessment once where literally they told us where to point our computers on the intranet, and right on the front page there was a link that said download all source code. I shit you not, and it was all source code, for the last 20 years and a big tarball. It was crazy. And this is like a huge healthcare company. Like it was nuts.
I did one once where we were looking at the network, so we were auditing that, and we actually air gapped their main border, and there's just tons of traffic. And I'm going, where's all this traffic coming from on the internet? And the guy's like, I don't know. And we ended up finding out there's 3 different access points scattered across this enterprise that are connected to the internet that have no firewalling, and most of their traffic is going through those access points. Because their main connection was firewalled, so everything was going out the other way, and people were coming in. They were connecting to stuff.
So now would be a good time to bring up PCI.
Oh God!
Hold on.
Let me get the jumper cables.
Hold on. Hold on.
I got it.
Get a refill.
I should have brought 2 beers with me. What was I thinking?
I like that Rob's drinking out of a Security Weekly beer mug, too.
Hell yeah!
All right.
Thank you for your support, my friend.
All right.
This is my favorite beer
Security
mug,
Weekly
man. I love
Mason
this
jar.
cover.
Thank you.
So, the PCI requirements include a requirement to have an inventory of all your systems. So, at least on paper, that should be happening. I guess my question is, for all of us that have experienced this pervasive, we don't know what's on our network, and it's a two-part question, and it's probably the question, it may be the $64,000, 800-pound gorilla, whatever analogy you want to use, but why do you think companies persist in letting all this bad behavior happen?
Because it's too hard.
Yeah, it's not
money.
so much that they're letting it happen. It's a lot of times they don't know it's happening, or it's happening, in pockets of shadow IT around the company where people, like the example you gave before of like all the random access points out, like someone just set that shit up because they were annoyed with the actual security. That stuff happens all the time.
Well,
It's hard to keep up when you have a big company.
yeah, shadow IT is what? Developers just trying to get their work done.
Well,
Right.
sometimes.
Sometimes.
That's one use case, Jeff.
It costs
Sure.
money, and you got to put your hands on it, and it's a huge project to try to evaluate because it's all evolutionary. It's been bolted together over 20 years, and when you go to the CISO, it's the don't ask, don't tell, and they're like, well, if we bring this up, somebody's budget's going to get crushed because we got to go out and we got to evaluate it, and it's going to take forever, and nobody wants you to know those things.
The thing that frustrates me is that in various aspects of this problem, it's fairly easy to get a handle on what your, for example, internet footprint is, right? Like if you were to interface with Shodan,
you run strobe.
right? And that's exactly where I was going, Jeff. Exactly the point. It's spot on, right? You interface with Shodan, you spin up some cheap cloud service, and you could even run strobe, right? And you scan what you think your IP address space is. You scan what you think your DNS footprint is. You look at your TLS certificates. Like there's a whole subsection of security, of the security industry that does this for you. But doing it yourself is really not all that difficult. Now, there are some advantages to having a commercial product, right? Like Jeremiah Grossman, for example, in Arsnake created a company called BitDiscovery that does this. There's like another handful of vendors that all have their different feature sets that do this. Also, there's open source tools and things that pen testers use today that you could totally implement yourselves, even just from the internet perspective, to give you a footprint. I've always been like, why don't more people do this? I've had to do it out of necessity, right? I'm cutting over a website. Did I get everything?
I know
Did I
the
fix
answer.
every link? Did I fix every DNS entry? And while I was doing QA, I was like, oh, shit, that's exposed to the internet, or that's still there, or that's pointing to the wrong place, or that's pointing to something that shouldn't be exposed to the internet. Like, it's not.
But we still live in what I call the engineering world.
And it's part of the internet exposure, is part of the problem, right?
And the engineering world is make it work.
Mm-hmm.
And this is where we live. Where we want to live is we want to live in the secure world. But it's really hard to be in the secure world because the make it work mentality is still our main focus. It's like our email is down, make it work. That database server needs to function, make it work. We'll worry about the security later, and then that's how that stuff starts to happen because you fix it and you slap a server up on the cloud, or you go in there and plug two wires together and go, we're up, good, and then you say, oh my God, I can get back to this other problem I was trying to solve. 2 years later, somebody comes in.
Just a little bit of a technical debt, and then it builds up, and it builds up. And builds
But
up,
I think
and
a lot of it is. Let me pontificate.
I can sum it up.
Well, hold on. Let me pontificate for a moment, Jeff.
You pontificate first, and then I'll pontificate and Trump.
So I like to relate it back to Marvel movies, and if you've seen Doctor Strange is arguably my favorite.
It's cool.
Marvel movie, right? And there's that scene where he first walks into the place where he meets his master for the first time, right? And I love it because it's very much it's Marvel's kung fu movie. Let's all be honest, right? And she makes him realize very quickly that he's looking at the world in through a keyhole. Is actually her line. You're looking at the world through a keyhole, and she very quickly opens up his mind that you've got a very narrow view of the world. And I think many of us, just because we're responding to requirements, we're trying to get things done, we tend to look at things through a keyhole. And I've done the same thing. Look, I'm not knocking anyone. I've done the same thing until I've kind of expanded my view of the world. I'm like, oh God, like we're really, in this case for security, exposed to the world. Very similar to how Dr. Strange goes, wow, I never considered those possibilities, right? I think that's where, in this context, a lot of us are at. And it takes an external person or assessment to kind of open up your view of the world to where you're really exposed, when it really shouldn't. You can come to those conclusions on your own if you kind of expand your view of things.
Yeah, and that's hard to do.
And it's very hard to do. And it's only through necessity that I've done some of those things in our own environment where I'm like, wow, we should really.
Because every time you sit down to do that, the phone rings.
Yes,
And
you're exactly right. Jeff?
My turn. So I was just simply going to say nobody cares.
It's true. No, it's very true.
The bottom line is nobody cares, and we've been talking on air for years, and the whole community, all the conferences I go to, we all see the problem. We're articulating the problem, and we all have this idea of what the answer is, and we're usually spinning up our own version of the same old tired thing, and nothing ever changes. And the bottom line is nobody cares.
Mm-hmm.
But we are like fitness nuts. Most people go to the doctor. The doctor says you shouldn't smoke, you shouldn't drink, and you should go run 5 miles every day or whatever they tell you to do. But we all ignore, right? I mean,
I take that advice
Of course you do. Paul was out running just before I got here. When I showed up, he came in all covered in sweat. He'd been working out. Yeah, and he was running with a Manhattan down the street. But
I drink a half a bottle of whiskey once a week.
That's right.
Yeah,
I get,
but I mean, ideally, we wouldn't do any of those things, so we'd be perfectly healthy and we would all be good. But we do all these bad things, and it's the same thing with security. People want to know just enough. Just enough to make it work. Mm-hmm. Let's keep it going. And then when something bad happens, we fix it. And they say, oh, we got hacked or we got taken out.
When we had our in-studio guests, I'm like, please don't hack my network. Because, again, a lot of what we've done is to make shit work.
Yeah,
right?
Exactly.
And that's...
Because the phone rang.
It goes... Mm-hmm. My other pontification, though, is, again, going back to PCI. PCI is 15 years old now. It has arguably had more impact on this industry and on industry as a whole in terms of applying any kind of security than anything else, and yet it's got huge problems. I mean, I don't.
I mean, it's very much a teenager trying to score at 15. Just saying.
Okay, you're saying.
Did I say that out loud?
Yes, you did.
Yes, you did.
But
we've been talking a lot about PCI, and I think that culminated. Anyway,
but PCI has done more to move security forward in the industry as a whole than anything else, I would argue. And I'm not saying it's moved it very far. But if it wasn't for PCI, if it wasn't for regulation and compliance, the majority of companies wouldn't do anything.
Right.
I agree. I wouldn't limit that to PCI, Jeff. I would say regulations and compliance have certainly moved it forward.
I'm pretty sure I said that, Paul.
Would, yeah, and okay, but I would put that number 2 behind breaches in terms of moving security forward.
Well, we talked about that on Enterprise yesterday. Breaches are why the companies are all of a sudden motivated. Mm-hmm. Most companies are only motivated because either somebody's making them do it, an outside force like compliance, regulation, PCI, or they've suffered a breach. I mean, there aren't a whole lot of companies, organizations out to decide we're going to spend a lot of money and invest in security because it's the right thing to do.
I think that's human nature, right? Like if you put that in something outside of cybersecurity, right? Like my car getting broken into in my driveway because someone went into my neighborhood of 50 homes and anyone's door who was unlocked, they opened the door to their car and they stole whatever was valuable inside of that car. After that happens to you, every night you're conscious of every night I have to lock my car door, right? That's the same thing when you've suffered a breach, right? And I think that's just human nature.
You do just enough to
Well,
survive.
And human nature also is you do that diligently for a month, 3 months, 6 months.
It's true, Jeff. Yep. You're
absolutely
right. Yep. Because they don't do it in the winter when it's really cold. They do it in the like summer months when it's warm. So when that happens, you're like, oh shit, I really need to do that. They don't do it during the winter. You let your guard down. Spring and summer roll around, and you let your guard down. To Jeff's point, and it happens again.
There you go.
I want to hear what Tyler thinks. Because Tyler's young and idealistic.
Oh, sorry. No, I was gonna say I have noticed that a lot of people outside of security that don't live in our world, like a lot of them, even today, like they hear about security, but they're just not immersed in it the way we are. So I have actually found you can shift mindsets if you get them in your world and let them know here's, there are real world issues that occur. They actually are, they're huge. And if you show them for like Privacy Rights Clearinghouse and, let them know that here, look, all these issues, they occur, they're real, and you start to have conversations with them about it. It actually does make a difference in my experience.
Yeah, they can learn. I mean, I think they can learn, and as they get educated, they do things that make sense. But they're still always going to be rising to the level of just doing what it takes to survive and making it work. And it's really tough to get enterprises to commit resources to things. I mean, it doesn't matter if it's security or accounting or anything else. They only commit resources to what they need to do to survive, and the rest of the time they can sleep and get drunk. I mean, it's just like humans.
Is anybody else curious about what Larry and Tyler are talking about?
I really don't want to know.
I see a lot of gesticulation over there. I am kind of curious myself.
There's a lot of.
It's my experience with freaking Raspberry Pis and HDMI power today, and how I wasted an hour and a half of my life because of a fucking USB cable.
Super interesting.
I love that quote. I wasted half my life because of a USB cable. I really relate to that, Larry. I think that's
yeah.
I'm right there with you.
So I will say I was relating this story to my class today. Like, I just wasted an hour and a half of my life trying to figure out what the goddamn problem with this was, and it turns out that this USB cable, as I'm sitting there with my knife, carving the plastic off the USB connector to figure out what this Chinese USB cable was doing. In front of class, I'm like, carving the stuff off of it. Nothing. It's just a piece of shit.
Nothing.
I just want to say that this was an awesome episode. And I didn't really plan it that way, that episode 600 would be this kind of culmination.
We had this massive planning session earlier,
we really didn't, and I just am thankful to have to be surrounded by smart people like yourselves and others that have been on the show this evening to make an awesome episode 600. So thank you, everyone, for being on this episode. Thank you, everyone, for listening and watching this episode and all episodes of Paul Security Weekly, and there'll be another 600 in the works. So,
I hope so.
Larry, I'm going to turn to you to take us out.
Over. And beer.
It's very fitting.